wanted to get started asking about the development of the script and what that process was like for you, Sam, in really creating the story and really working on the story overall for the screenplay.
The process of working on the story?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it was just, I guess, the idea actually came from Vicky, the producer. The idea, I'd been working on another gang story, and she sort of suggested trying to tell the story of a man in 3 different chapters to sort of see how he got from A to B. And I originally actually wasn't, I thought it was too ambitious, which it probably was. But anyway, went forward with it. And yeah, I guess I was actually quite an inspired sort of time of writing. I just found myself really going for it. And what really connected me, I think, was the internal journey, was this sort of the sense of this lost man who wanted to find belonging, who wanted to find his family, and just, you know, was searching in this really intense masculine world, and so kept butting his head against it. Like the sense that he wasn't able to find intimacy with the people that he loved, with this, you know, or with this woman, Flo. He wasn't able to be vulnerable with her and or his brother, and it just sort of meant that he wasn't able to form these relationships. And it's because of the sort of the hard background that he went through. And yeah, I just found that internal dynamic and setting that in a really sort of energetic, violent world really interesting.
And then, Jake, I also wanted to ask you about maybe when you received the script and what really interested you about the story and your character in the film as well.
I remember when I first read the synopsis and the character breakdown moments before I started the script, and instantly I was drawn to it. And, you know, this is a role, you know, the toxic masculinity of that kind of guy, but then you couple it with, you know, the vulnerability and a you know, full of heart as well. It's you don't get many roles like that coming along, and to me it was straight away I sort of saw it as a romper stomper-esque, or, you know, like these classic Australian New Zealand films, Once for Warriors, Animal Kingdom kind of thing that don't come along very often. So as soon as I read that, and then I read the script and was just blown away with it. It was so much. It was so emotional. The character is just so complex. There's so many layers to damage. So it was a dream role. You know, I think genuinely it was. When I read it, I was pretty blown away. And the idea, I was fantasizing about the idea of getting the role, and then eventually, you know, 5 months later, we got to dig into it and start sort of going for it. So it was I definitely something that I'll forever be grateful for. An amazing experience, the whole lot.
I also wanted to ask you both about also maybe doing any research into the your character's life overall and just what he might go through, like getting into the gang and really staying there throughout his adult life, and just what that experience was like for you both, and maybe doing any research you did before.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I'd sort of read every book and watched every clip that I could find on, you know, New Zealand gang culture, the Mongrel Mob and Black Power. And they can give, you know, they give you a certain level of what it's like. But it wasn't until I went over there with Sam and met some current and ex-members, and a lot of the guys that were from the era that the film's told. So they were probably in their 60s, 70s, but listening to them talk about their experience, and not so much the gang experience, but their experience, their childhood, and what that was like for them, going through that sort of state care abuse and everything, and then that led them to finding family and solace in a gang culture. So that to me was a really important part of the research, was, you know, not just the tough gang guy. I mean, and that was pretty easy to find you can find that anywhere on the internet, but to get a real insight into the humanity of these men and what they're like underneath their, you know, masks was really important. And yeah, that was, seeing them open up and shed a tear about their childhood was pretty amazing. So.
And then, Sam, I also wanted to ask you the same as well. And while you were working on the script, maybe what kind of research you did into really getting to know about the lifestyles for the characters as well.
Most valuable was meeting gang members, like Jake said, and meeting them from different gangs in New Zealand. but sitting down with them in cars or in their house or wherever I could, and just hearing their stories, hearing how gangs worked, first of all, was important. You know, the values, the structure, the hierarchy, how it worked. You know, if there was the criminal component, the violence, the, you know, sex component, woman, culture, everything I could find out about it. But then also their own personal stories about how they got involved, how, you know, the often came through state care. That was the common thread from a lot of gang members that I talked to. And the sort of sense that set them on a path, that sort of isolation from their family, that sort of estrangement, that neglect and abuse that they suffered there was really informative. It was, and that sort of trauma was something that, you know, you react to for the rest of your life in a way. So, you know, that sense of wanting to find a family and safety in this gang unit. And and it was actually just, it was really necessary to find the specificity of those New Zealand gangs and try and depict it. I wanted to tell a story that New Zealand gang members could watch and feel like it was accurate and authentic.
And also, I wanted to ask about going on to direct the film as well, and what that experience was like for you, going from working on the script into directing, and how maybe working on the screenplay really influenced your directing style.
Yeah, it was, well, it was a stressful experience. It was very, speaking of trauma, it was a very ambitious film, you know, and so, and there's a lot of moving parts, but, you know, I think we assembled a really great team, and that's the first thing, because, you know, you're not making it by yourself. And so, yeah, there was some like beautiful collaborations there, you know. James Brown, our DOP, did a beautiful job. I'd spent a long time trying to find a DOP who could bring that sort of edgy darkness to it, but still have this organic sort of feel to it, this moodiness. So yeah, and then filming was it was just every day is sort of survival. You know, you're just trying to get through and find, you know, you're aware that this is it, this is your moment, you know, and so you're gonna, you know, whatever, it's going to be on screen forever. And but so while you're sort of feeling really you know, stressed and anxious, to sort of actually try and let go all of that and allow yourself to be vulnerable and to find truth with the actors and to work with them at a really, you know, humane level, so that anchors them, you know. And so I absolutely love working with actors, and it was a real treat working with Jake. He's someone who was really well researched. He loved to talk with me about the character background and just go through each scene and really investigate, you know, not only what the scene is about, but then to be personal with it, to go into moments of his own life where, you know, he might have been through something similar, even if it was something really, you know, even though the world's really different from his own, there's really universal human emotions and connections there. And Jake, I think, was really brave during the shoot, going into some really dark places with Damage. And I'm really grateful to him for doing that.
Also, speaking of getting to work with the cast, I also wanted to ask you both about really collaborating with the rest of the actors and really building those relationships on set while you were filming as well.
I mean, I pretty much worked solely most of the film with John Toohey, who's plays Moses, who's amazing. He's a powerhouse actor. He's got a credit list as long as your arm in Hollywood, in New Zealand, in Australia. So to work with him was great. But he also, we really sort of had a real brotherhood connection from the very first moment without sort of trying. And I think that was really important for Moses and Damage to have that, you know, genuine connection with each other, because they've spent their whole lives, they've gone through everything together. So I think it's something that wasn't forced for me and John off camera. You know, he's a brother for life now, and you know, I think that was definitely help. I mean, I've worked with Chelsea before, who plays Flo, so I was super excited when I heard that Sam had cast Chelsea, because she's an amazing actress, and she's I knew that anything with her would pop on. You know, she's so good, and she brought some really good soft stuff out of me, which, you know, I think I'm very grateful for. And then the other guys like young Red, who Poraki, who hadn't done much acting before. He was great, the little prospect. I loved working with him. We sort of built a really strong relationship together, and then Tug as well. So, and it was because there was a mix of actors and actual gang members there too. So that was a really interesting experience to, you know, one moment you're working with someone who's, you know, been working for 25 years in the industry, and the next scene you've got with someone who's never been in front of a camera before, but, you know, brought so much real, raw authenticity that you feed off. So, yeah, it was a great melting pot, and I think, yeah, I loved working in that environment.
Sam, I also wanted to ask you as well about the casting and getting to work with the rest of the actors as well, for you as the director.
Yeah, as Jake said, it was actually a really nice mix to have the mix of professional actors, along with people who have never acted before but are sort of more authentic to that world or have experience in that world. You know, they were able to sort of really anchor the professional actors into that world, and the professionals were able to sort of help them being on a film set. So yeah, and it was I really loved, you know, also finding our savages. You know, that was a really organic casting process where we went out into the community, and you know, we put a call out on Facebook and asked for people with scars, broken teeth, tattoos, criminal records, and got thousands upon thousands of applications, from which we had to select. I think we saw about a couple of thousand people from around the country, just traveling from city to city. And yeah, from that we found some real gems that ended up being in our Savage gang. And yeah, I think I'm really stoked with all the performances from all around. It's such a you know, challenge, because basically all these roles are sort of like short film roles in a way, other than Damage, who's sort of, you know, the real meaty one. All of them sort of come and go, and, you know, so there's a lot of people who sort of just had to find it quite quickly, but yeah, they did beautifully.
Also, I wanted to ask you both about really creating the physicality for the characters and their looks overall, and what that experience was like for you both, and really approaching the way that characters would maybe walk or really present themselves physically as well during filming.
Yeah, I mean, that was really important for Damage. I mean, I spent a lot of time with Sam and our cultural advisor Wayne Harpy on getting just Damage's walk down pat, because it was different to how I would walk, or so we, you know, just little things like that, the way they sort of hold themselves. I gained about 40 pounds, I think, for the role, so that helped a lot as well, just getting that bigger size, especially when you walk into the gang pattern. You've got 40 guys there that are huge. Like there's some big boys out there, and you know, physically you had to sort of be close to par with them as you could. But yeah, you know, Sam worked with me a lot with getting that physicality down, and having that hammer in your hand constantly also gives you something as well. But the walk was really important, because a lot of everything else sort of branched off from the walk. So once we got his walk right and how he holds himself, it was a lot easier to sort of free fall into other bits of physicality, because that was a solid base that we had.
No, Sam, I wanted to ask you the same question as well, and as the director, what that experience was like for you to work with the cast and working on their physicality as well.
Yeah, it was really important, because New Zealand gang members move in a very, you know, it's often called the boob shuffle. It's there's a lot of aggression in the way they walk, and it's a sort of a I don't know if I can swear, but it's a don't F with me sort of vibe that is often given out, and it is specific to that environment, and the voice is sort of specific as well often, you know, the way they talk. And so, you know, it was important to me to anchor Jake's you know, connection into that world, into real gang members. So you know, I took Jake and John Tui, who did a beautiful job playing Moses, the, you know, Damage's best friend, into a garage with a few current gang members who, you know, were older guys, but had, you know, so they had a huge experience in that world. and just to sort of for them to observe them, really, to hear them speak, to see them move, to you know, get a sense of what they've been through, and just anchor them not only from a physical point of view, but actually more importantly from a sort of an emotional and intellectual sort of point of view, to sort of start aligning with those characters.
And then lastly, I also wanted to ask you both about getting to film on location and what that experience was like of deciding where you wanted to shoot and really creating the look for each location as well overall.
So sorry about the locations, about how we chose them, or?
Yeah, and then creating also the look and deciding where you wanted to shoot overall.
Yeah, so it's set in Porirua, which is where I grew up, and it's this beautiful multicultural city, and a lot of Polynesians and state houses. And so that was really always sort of the heart of the film, really, for me, in terms of the third chapter, the adult gang world chapter. The gang pad was a really important sort of spiritual home for the film. It's actually a marae, which is Maori, Indigenous people, their traditional meeting house. And so they had on this marae, not actually in the meeting house itself, but in their living, their house, essentially. It was fully formed. We walked in and it was just like, it was so perfect. Not only, usually, you know, when you shoot something, you have to shoot the exterior different from the interior. But we were able to actually use their garage to create a gang pad, and it had these sort of hard textures, these concrete steel walls, and it was a fantastic environment. It felt really authentic, actually. And, you know, I think the art department did a great job at, you know, and Chris Elliott, who lead the production design, at just, you know, just again, researching the world and anchoring it so it all felt truthful. So the bottles of beer felt truthful. And even some of the guys who came on set, the gang members, just sort of, they gave it their nod of approval, which was, you know, really important for me.
Okay, great. Thank you both again for taking the time, and I appreciate it.
No, thanks, Karen. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks
Lovely to meet
again.
you.